Hey, my name is JD, and I'm from the Avery Point Academic Center here to talk to you today about falling behind and catching up on missed classwork. Consider what happened the last time you fell behind in a class. And if you've never fallen behind, I don't believe you. If you're ever confused in class or having difficulty catching up on work before finals, or if haphazard cramming is just part of your study routine, here is a more organized and thorough method for catching up that I like to call the 5 A's. Firstly, you want to assess the reasons why you might be behind. Then you want to address those external factors. Then ask your professor for help, execute your plan of attack, and make an appointment to follow up. Now, the first step is to assess the reasons why you might be behind. And it's really important to figure out the why of being behind. Odds are really good that the same issues keep interfering with your ability to remain on schedule. And even if you can't fix all of them, if you can name them, we can figure out ways to work around them. Different catching up strategies apply to different reasons, such as uncontrollable life factors, controllable life factors, scheduling conflicts, or just difficulty with prior material. So take a moment to think about what are the reasons why you've fallen behind in the past, or reasons you think other people might fall behind. Just think of a few, and hopefully we'll be able to sort them into one of these categories. A bunch of possible reasons that I've seen a lot in my work has been things like uncontrollable like factors like sick days or family emergencies or mental or emotional health struggles, other urgent, like really uncontrollable events. You might have some issues with controllable life factors like procrastination or social media distractions or non-important celebratory events, all online, of course, or other tempting recreational activities. Oftentimes you see people have scheduling conflicts where they have difficult finding time to study due to their work schedule or a heavy workload in other classes, or just having a really hard time managing asynchronous scheduling or other like really time intensive obligations that may not necessarily be related to schoolwork. Oftentimes you'll see people struggle because they have difficulty understanding previous material. Like, for example, you didn't really understand something that was presented in week 1, and all of a sudden it's still relevant during week 7 when you never really understood it the first time. Or if they can't remember or were just never taught any prerequisite information. You see this a lot in English or writing courses where oftentimes students just did not receive grammar lessons in high school, and then they're putting them into English classes where all of a sudden grammar is a whole big deal and you're kind of expected to know it. Oftentimes people have like a lack of technical knowledge where they're like just like really struggling with the technology or anything else that's contingent on cumulative knowledge from previous classes. Of course, you can have issues with more than one of the above, and that's where addressing those issues really comes into play. You have to pay attention to the factors that interfere with schoolwork and make sure to address them, or else they might interfere again. You can eliminate distractions if possible, like finding a distraction-free study zone for uncontrollable distractions like small children, or disconnecting from controllable distractions like social media and electronics. You can ask family members or other people you live with to help keep those distractions away. Something else that might be really important is to schedule your study time in advance, especially if you're trying to study around a job. For example, if you black out a period of time, like for example, 5 to 8 p.m. on Saturday, and just say, okay, I am going to study from this period of time to that period of time. You can arrange other events around your designated study time and try to arrange those events around your synchronous classes and set yourself a designated time to work on asynchronous material. Going to class really helps prevent falling further behind, and it can help you like preview material even if you don't understand all of it yet. Basically, just treat school like a job and devote time to it and stick to that schedule. If you really can't do all of it, prioritize the importance of emergencies. If you experience like serious health conflicts or family emergencies, ask for accommodations or extensions. If you have issues and they're only affecting one class, consider just asking your professor. But if it more likely affects multiple classes, you might want to obtain accommodations through Branford House. You can secure appointments via Nexus, and they will be able to talk to you via WebEx or Zoom. We'll figure out something that can work. You might want to contact Trudy Flannery of Student Services or Katie Halbrunner for Disability Services. If you have issues with scheduled events, including synchronous online ones, for example, your sister's wedding might be more important or urgent than your homework, you can schedule your study time around those events, and just kind of like block out that afternoon, but then say, okay, I have to make up the study hours later, and set yourself a designated time to do that. If it's other classwork that's really giving you a lot of trouble, you might want to just list your tasks by order of importance. Use your class syllabi to figure out what's most important, whether it's specific assignments or topics or whatever it is. Consider looking at the grade values. Studying for a final that's worth 50% of your grade is maybe more important than the homework that is only worth 10%. Though in theory, you would like to do both of those things. One of those things is clearly weighted much more heavily than the other. All in all, just make sure to manage your time and manage your time really thoroughly. Another thing that might be helpful is managing your energy and managing your energy really thoroughly. For example, if you know like you are super not a morning person, you maybe want to schedule your study time for the evenings. If you know you're really tired during the evenings, just try to schedule your study time in the mornings. Just thinking about when can I squeeze in some time to study, when can I squeeze in some energy to study, can be a really helpful way to figure out that what you can do to address issues where you might not have time or energy to study. Something else that's really important is to move on to the next step and ask your professor for help. Once you've figured out ways to cope with external factors or scheduling issues affecting schoolwork, you should really talk to your professors. You can make an appointment to meet with your professors. They often have a designated WebEx room specifically for this purpose. And don't be embarrassed to ask. Most professors are more than happy to help. They're really willing to work with you if you let them know that you're behind. And if you ask for assistance, you can let them know that, hey, I need some extra time. If you need due date extensions, if it's necessary or appropriate, such as for emergency reasons, it's a good idea to talk to your professor or contact Branford House, whichever applies to your situation better. It's not a big deal to talk to professors and say that you're behind. They're usually really eager to help students who ask for assistance, and please don't be embarrassed. Everyone has been here before. It's really useful to discuss material that you've missed from class and obtain class notes from your professor or from a classmate who has them. Additionally, you can try going to an academic center review session if it's offered for that subject. You should ask your professor what material is most important to know and prioritize. If you could only study one more thing, what would you study? Like, ask your professor what are the most important topics that are key for the next exam or the next assignment. Additionally, professors are usually really willing to help if you just want to review previous material that you didn't understand before. Ask the professor about any prior knowledge that you think they assumed you knew. If you don't know it, odds are really good that some of your classmates are also lost. Again, in general, it is really not a big deal to ask for help. It's actually a really key part of setting aside a plan of attack, which is our next subject. It's a simple yet sometimes challenging process to execute your plan of attack. Now that you know what is the most important thing to study, what things are you going to prioritize above everything else? What does the professor really want you to do to catch up? You just kind of have to maintain willpower to begin studying at the scheduled time and to minimize distractions during that time as much as possible and just focus. If you have some difficulty doing this, you can try to find an accountability buddy, which is having someone to study with who can help you keep you focused. You really don't have to be in person. You can consider like WebEx or Zoom study sessions. Additionally, the Avery Point Academic Center does offer accountability sessions. If you visit yukon.mywconline.net, you can sign up for a study session and you can sit down with somebody who has done this before and just say, hey, over the next hour, I want to get this piece of work done. And they will say, great. And then you will both work for an hour and come back at the end. And you can say, okay, I got this much done. This is what I'm going to do next. I think it's really helpful just to have someone who's there with you so you don't feel quite so alone, which I think a lot of people struggle with, especially with the move to an online format. Again, it's really critical to employ prioritization strategies and study your most important topics first. Scan for information that your professor pointed out when you spoke to them, and skip over less important topics if necessary. Include some time to review this new information, and remember, you can do this. Finally, you're going to want to create a follow-up appointment. Touching base after a study session can minimize the likelihood that you fall behind again. It ensures that you understood the material, you can review key topics, and it points to what you need to study next. Additionally, it will reinforce the information and help you remember it. If you make an appointment with your professor or with an academic specialist, you can cover any important topics that you may have missed. It furthermore helps you set a deadline for yourself because it breaks up studying into larger themes or processes and helps you set like, okay, by this date during which I have an appointment, I need to have studied these subjects. You can make appointments with your professors by email usually, or with an academic center specialist via yukon.mywconline.net. The Avery Point Academic Center tutors were most likely hand-selected by your professor if you go to Avery Point campus. And if you make the appointments, odds are really good they've had the experience you've had before and can help you figure out what's going on or what steps you need to take next in your studying. All right, so that's the method, but next I would like to hear back from you guys. Like, leave your opinion in the comments. How late is too late to catch up? In my experience, catching up becomes pretty much impossible if I'm more than 6 weeks behind. I have, however, heard some people claim that they can cram the night before finals and effectively, quote unquote, catch up. Something else that I think is really interesting is like, is last minute cramming effective for you guys? And is there a way to instigate like last minute panic productivity before the actual last minute? Something else you might want to consider is like, how does catching up differ from class to class? And what strategies can you use to manage school stress during this time? Anyways, that's it for today. I hope I was able to help you guys out. And